it's important to me that anyone going to see the show feels that they're looking at work which they haven't necessarily seen before. My work is well known now. People have expectations of what it's going to be, and I like to confound these expectations. So I hope there'll be some pieces in this new show which they'll have to look twice, and they might not be, they'll think it's by somebody else, or they'll say, I haven't seen anything like that before. I don't want them to go expecting there to be lots of red fields with white cottages, because if they'll be disappointed. There's very few. These days, shows are catalogued comprehensively, both on the web and in the case of the Heinzman, in these wonderful books. So I had a look at the book before I even started, and to try to, rather than sometimes you have a theme, for a general theme for a show, but this was more about making sure that the work here wasn't revisiting the work in the new show, wasn't revisiting the work which is here. If I was going to be doing a picture of Caterline or a picture of Donata, I wanted to make sure that there was some feeling that the artist, well, 4 years had passed. I hadn't just been sitting reading the Sunday Post. That my work was serious enough to try to move it on. And this show's actually came together, fingers crossed, better than I had anticipated. I thought I might have more trouble, and there was a period, a 5-6 week period, where I seemed to be operating as well as I've painted for years and years and years. I felt sometimes it's a struggle, and you're never sure why you're doing it, not even what you're doing. But I felt that I was really in charge of what was happening and having a lot of fun trying different things. And so, just like each individual painting, really, you can do it, plan ahead and have ideas, but it has a life of its own. The show, how you prepare for the show, has a life of its own. But I think the work for this show is really good and will hang well together, fingers crossed. I never say I'm an artist, I'll say I'm a painter. And you always have to pair with a painter. I paint pictures as opposed to I paint walls, because I'm not alone in this view. It's common that you can't call yourself an artist. Only somebody else can call you an artist. What I do is I paint. I'm a painter. That's what I do. And if there's art comes out of it, that's almost nothing. That's good. That would be great. But I can't say that it's art. Other people have to say that I'm an artist. So sometimes in shorthand, when you're describing yourself or writing, you use the term artist because it's understood. Painter is what I wanted to be. I didn't, even when I was teaching, I never said I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to see if I could make a living as a painter. That was important to my sense of myself. The studio is not a particularly comfortable, relaxing place. It's not a place I go to look at books particularly or wind down. I do that elsewhere. It's a place I go to work. It's me going to, when I shut the door, I'm working. So it's not any excuse to stay out of it. It's usually welcome, but you kind of force yourself. A show like the big solo show gives you, you have no choice. You've just got to go and get it done. No, I think as you can see, that if you look at my stuff, although I buy good paints, as best paints I can, the brushes are usually budget buy brushes because the way I work, they run them very quickly, and you have palette knives, palette knives, credit cards, which a lot of artists use to put paint on or use as edges. I've got rollers, print rollers. But radiator brush, that's going to be good for something. There's a million bits of kit, and every bit can be bits, wallpaper, scrapers. They've all been used at some time or other, and they can all be your best friend sometimes, but sometimes they can all be instruments of torture. They just don't do what you want to do. So I don't have any favourite bits of kit really. I like paper, but not brushes. I have no relationship with brushes. They're just things I pick up and throw away. Canvases, board, but you could fall in love with paper. Paper is such a, and it makes everything you do. I mean, let's face it. What have you got? You've got an applicator, your brush, or a palette knife. You've got your medium, your paints or your inks, or whatever you do, and you've got your surface, which is your canvas or your board. That's really all you've got. But within that, there's an infinite variety of things you can do. But unless I get the surface right, I really struggle. In fact, I'm struggling with this painting. Normally, if I get a canvas or a board, presently, my technique changes over the years, but at the moment I'm using this Japanese silk paper, which has it's made up of loose fibres and has a fairly rough side and a smooth side. And I'm using wallpaper paste. I'll paste it on the canvas, then put on a gesso primer. And there's a clear gesso primer which gives you a very, very rough, almost like sandpaper surface, which I use sometimes, or a white gesso which gives you a normal surface. And I did it on that one, which was like that. But on this one I didn't. I was a bit impatient and I thought I was going to be doing something else here. There's quite a lot under that. This has ended up as a painting. It never started out as. And so I did this one, and the application of paint just went like a dream. It was on Sunday. When you see the edges are so important to my work. To me in my work, and the way the paint, the fibres catch the paint, gives you this beautiful, just broken edge. And so this worked quickly, and trying to get the same effect here on the canvas is almost impossible. I'm really having to do twice, 3 times as much work to get the effect I'm after. As you can see, there's a piece here. I'm going to put a figure in there. I'll put a figure in there, which is unusual again for me, and I've stuck on bits of the tissue paper, and I'm hoping there's other bits stuck on. So there's odd bits which I think will carry it through, but it's so it's one of my favourite bit of kit. It would probably be at the moment is this, and really I find it difficult to paint unless I've got this as a surface. Though the same would apply to watercolour paper, or different kinds of paper, but paper to me is the key ingredient to the work, the thing that can make your job easy or can make it virtually impossible. Trying to paint a particular technique on the wrong surface is difficult. What I should really do, I think, is adapt. I've painted a different picture. If I wasn't going to change the surface, I'd just change the picture, but trying to paint this painting on this surface, I've just given myself a lot of work. In any painting, any work you do, there's some art and there's some artifice, and what I try to do is to keep the artifice to a minimum and the art to a maximum. And when the still life painting, this is a still life, well, it's more an interior than stuff. I'm trying to construct this picture about a painting within a painting. This is something I've been trying with it, 2 or 3 things. Originally, the idea was going to be here was a view at the window, but I changed it to one of my paintings in the background of one of my paintings. It's a kind of play on Magritte and know how he was. So, but it's more constructed. It's a more deliberate construction of angles, colours. I mean, this bit here, this is intuitive. Now you're a musician, Bobby. What I'm trying to do here is it's a choral piece, if you like. It's a song. It's like a choir. I'm trying to make sure that there's a harmony within the whole range here. I'm not even including this bit of that bit of the picture, but I'm conscious of what I'm going to say. So I've been working, you look at this, you can see there's various pinks and oranges and the greens have changed to try to get the right note. You're trying to hit a note which just like you hear a note in harmony, it just sounds right. When you listen to the Beach Boys or what's their name, Crosby, Stills and Nash, it just can sound right. And so it's this idea, that's what's taken my attention here. So there's not a lot, the intuition is only in picking the right colour, but if I take this painting here, which I'm working on at the same time, this is going to be a landscape piece, and this is a much more intuitive work in that the paint does all it wants to do. don't take any control. I let it run, dribble, move about without trying to do very much to it, and allow the sort of, in this bit, there's an energy there with the splashes. Obviously, there's an acknowledgement and nod towards Jackson Pollock and people like that. But you're trying, hopefully, I'll be able to paint a picture which might have up here, might have a bit of denoter, a bit of cataline, but have down here almost an abstract and expressionist piece, which I won't touch or try not to touch. I'd like to leave certainly that bit and marry the two. And I think that, if anyone is wearing my work, is a bit unusual, a bit different, and that I can convince people to accept that within a more traditional landscape genre. And it's quite tricky, and you have to try to persuade people to come with you. I couldn't have done that 10 years ago, I don't think. I think you had it's a journey for everybody, me as well. Although you might think that the eventual outcome would be a totally abstract picture, funnily enough, that never seems to quite work. This won't work until I put in the other elements which will give it a scale, a perspective, and they will then persuade you that this reads as a piece of landscape. But at the moment, it's just paint on canvas. And this, going from that stage to the stage where you persuade people that what's effectively splashes and blobs and blotches is actually representing something they might have seen. I think that, if anything, that's one of the strengths of my work. Let's maybe take a smaller landscape out of here, one that's finished, give you a slight idea of what I mean. That's got similar to the bottom bit, very much an X-ray paint, colour and the similar tones. But once you've put in the I think the first thing was the hill. Once you establish that hill sky, suddenly you've said that's the distance. The trees give you a sort of middle ground, and then I had to go back and adjust bits here to make it tie in. But I try to make the bottom, the adjustment at the bottom, if you like, as little as possible. I feel that the less I can do, some of the more successful is. Just as a maybe we can look. You'll see that group of trees, or that which is very common in my work, is actually what I see at the window. Look at the window. There's the trees there. And in almost every painting, they paint themselves virtually, and they give that. And they're usually not the distance. They're usually just. If you think of one of my landscapes, you'll see that a lot of the forms initially go vertically. The elements are pointing in a vertical direction, and suddenly there's horizontals. There's a point in the picture where it changes from vertical to horizontal, and that's usually where I'll maybe put some trees in to bring that, and that gives you a feeling for the. So there's no perspective as such in the way that you do perspective with parallel lines and so on, but there's a colour perspective, and there's also this idea that it changes. It's obvious again here. There's a vertical structure to horizontal. So that's where it's going to change somewhere about there, and that's based on just my observations of that. I'll say sometimes in the workshops, a lot of people paint their paintings using a sort of viewfinder, in which case if you do that to a view, you're actually starting your painting halfway up the view, where I try to paint from my feet. So I'm looking and I'm painting a bit immediately in front of my feet, in front of my nose, and that's what gives me the pardon me, the long verticals in a picture, and then the distance bit appears later. Obviously, and you can see in that one there's some idea of colour perspective, and that the blues, purples, the cool end of the spectrum begin to predominate towards the top of the picture, as that's the furthest away, where the warm, that's just basic colour science, colour chemistry, the warm colours at the front, and it creates this the effect I'm looking for of going back. I mean, when I was in the early days of painting, and was doing red fields, orange fields and purple trees, I used to get them copied at a colour shop, a photocopy shop, and the guy suggested, well, since the colours were all wrong anyway, let's just reverse them and it should look just as good. And we reversed the colour so the trees became orange and the orange became blue, and it didn't work at all. The picture didn't make any sense whatsoever. Only although the colours are not necessarily the greens and yellow ochres you would see, there's a logic to them which helps the painting work. To try and answer, I've put this painting up particularly because I think, as I said to you earlier, the weather has been so bad in the lead up to this painting that pretty well, and given that I try to paint what's in my head at the time, rather than go looking, I don't search for subject matters, I make marks on the board and then I see what it suggests, and inevitably what it's suggesting is what I'm seeing every day. And so I put this up because this is Uri House, which gives the estate its name, and this is just, I take the dog out 2 or 3 times every day and I walk past every day and every time you come in and out. So at the moment it's that's a scaffolding, it's not under repair, it's in dereliction. This view is a morning, usually I go in the morning, and quite often it's this is the sun coming up, that's facing south behind, so it's in kind of in shadow, which is this is. You won't necessarily see, well, you certainly won't see that on the walk. You'll see muddy tracks and so on, and not necessarily these trees here, I've moved them over, but pardon me, the idea of that you could see that view, more or less. If you saw that, you know that's where the painting idea comes from. Now, I didn't go there, though I have drawn it before, I didn't go with a sketch pad. I found myself painting here, and it was just in my head, and it came out onto the canvas. And similarly, I've got these 2 paintings here, are part of the dog walk. These are the beginning of the dog walk. In fact, that view, I've painted that view before, and it was that composition was very new to me. I'd never done anything like it before, and certainly for a show a few years ago, I found me doing 3 or 4 of the similar compositions. I couldn't really work out what was happening till I did work it out eventually. We had upstairs, when we moved in here, the bathrooms had no windows at all, and we got fed up and we got Velux windows put in. And one morning I was standing shaving, and that was what I saw. Out the Velux window, was this group of trees was there, and hadn't constantly gone in, but obviously it had gone in somewhere because it found its way onto the canvas without me making the link until I tried to trace back exactly, why was I painting that? And I realised I was seeing it every day now. You'll see these trees as you're leaving, you'll see them just, and the pond actually is probably about there, but I feel able to change the elements, replace them quite happily, but they're only in it because they're in my head as something I've seen. These, as I say, can be traced, and you would see the connection between where I am, what I do, and what's ending up on the canvas. And a slight variation, we'll look at these. Put that down there. These are things I've done before. The lily pond. The lily pond's just out there. It's because there are no lilies just now, but in the summer. So that's where I'm getting every day. I'll be past the pond or in the garden, and you just take in the colours within the lily. You know, I'm not having to research that or invent it. It's just something which is sunk in. And these, obviously these are considered Monet's lily ponds, lily paintings. And in he has these, which are reeds in Giverny. I've never been to Giverny. I've always wanted to go, and I'll go soon. And this sort of technique of dribbling the paint to recapture the reeds, I was quite pleased with that. In a way, it's a pinch from Callum Innes, the Aberdeen painter who does these sort of things in a big abstract way. But I like the way that you can, by using very loose abstract elements almost, create this thing which reads as a lily pond. It's not, I know most folk would read that see it as a physical thing, but if you broke it down, deconstructed it, it's just little painterly things all kind of stuck together. And these little ones, I do the small paintings really as studies to get ready for some of the bigger ones. Now, these ones have got a very similar composition, horizontal bands. Again, if you're out on the walk, there's a bit where you look across and you're looking down towards the mairns, and it's very much a set of horizontal bands. And these are just about the time of day. You're out with the dog, you're half asleep sometimes, the early morning walk, you know, you're cold or you're too hot, you're thinking about what the day begins. But at the same time, things are going into your head, and so you can bring these out, and they're about, for me, they're about feeling a particular day. But there are no elements necessarily that you could recognise, so that that can be read as a river, I would say, or as a frozen field, which it probably is, and things like that. No, these are. So I think what I'm trying to say is that I've reached the stage where I'm quite comfortable to let things absorb, do whatever they do inside, and then just come out and not question, not to feel that I have to have a drawing. Like most like before, I needed a drawing, something to work from, a reference point to work from before I was comfortable. Now I don't need that. I let what's the word I'm looking for? I look at the sensation, the feeling of being somewhere on a day, and let the paint do the talking, if you like. It's all about how paint sticks to a surface, and that isn't painted in the way you would paint the trees. It's just one wet stroke of really wet paint, and you let it dry, or you help it along with a rag, and you create a feeling. You say, well, what could that be? Could it be a field of winter stubble? Well, that's what it is, a field of winter stubble. Is that a summer field, a spring field? And these are allowing, in this one, that's very much constructed by me. The top bit almost painted itself, and there's things there, the way the sky grades down to what is a field, which are near the art. When I talk about art and artifice, that's maybe in that one, there's a certain amount of artifice, and I've constructed it, created it. But in there, I've let it's happened, I've been in control to a certain extent, but just and no more. And that's the bit that if anyone said to me, let's just say, for instance, someone said, oh, I really love that, and you'd sold it, could you paint me another one? I'd have to say, well, probably no. I could paint the bottom bit easily, but I couldn't paint the top bit again. And that's what I love, the fact I can't ever do that again. It's happened, it's done, and it's almost nothing to do with me, I was just there at the time. That's the joy. That's why I come to the studio. When something like that happens, that's really, really good. These days I know when it's time to stop, when Teresa shouts your tea's on the table. For this show I've been spending quite long hours in the studio, longer than usual, and I just stop when I'm told. But for the individual painting, I don't have that problem. No, usually I'm pretty sure I know when to stop. You just feel that if you do anything else, it's just not going to make it any better. There's a stage where, it's maybe not exactly as you want it, but short of starting again, you're not really going to improve it. Though, when I say stop's not quite the same as finishing. You stop it, put it away, but it's not it's not done. I'd always have it out again later on, have a look, and if I still don't think there's anything I can do, then it gets varnished, and when it's varnished, that's the end. The best moment for me will be in a fortnight's time or 3 weeks' time, when I'll go into the gallery, Maura will have hung the work will be on the wall, all framed up. She'll have seen connections I haven't seen. She'll have hung work in a certain way. The work which I was looking at 3 weeks ago, wondering should I change that red to brown or should I move that, suddenly has a status, and it looks as if you meant every single brushstroke. When it's on the wall, in a frame, in a gallery, it looks as if everything you did is absolutely full of intent and just perfect. And that moment when you go in, and if there are people there and they're having a glass of wine, smiles on their face, it makes a lot of what you do worthwhile.